Alright, this is my presentation on the JVC Soccer Club, specifically Player 8, I'm midfielder. So first, a club profile. This is a 3rd Division club. They train Monday, Wednesday, Friday for about 4 hours a week. It is considered between recreational and elite with the U17 players, so it should be noted when we look at their test results compared to his peers that not all players aspire to become professionals. Now into the player profile. He is a midfielder. He's very motivated, wants to play at a professional level, was very focused when we observed training sessions and match play, and when we spoke to Remco. He is very concentrated on becoming a professional, and this should be also considered when we plan his periodization. He's 15 years old with 11 years of playing experience, so this should be considered to have a large level of sport-specific skill. And this will come back later in the periodization when we look at the fact that he has a large level of sport-specific skill and a low level of movement, stability, and mobility. And he's also right foot dominant, so this should be considered when we look at skill or test results in the love board passing test and some of the ball agility drills that we conducted on the players. This graphic here shows his test results compared to the team average. You can see he does very well in some of the categories. For example, motivation. He's a very motivated athlete, as I mentioned. He's also has very good agility, both with the ball and without the ball. And then come to the taxes scores, he does well in lots of categories. The category that I'm most concerned about is knowing about changing situations. As a midfielder, the entire essence of the position is changing from the defending phase to the attacking phase. And this is obviously a changing situation. So he must be proficient in reading stimuli in this situation. Moving on to the functional movement screen, he really struggles in every category of the functional movement screen. And as Gray Cook, the founder of the functional movement screen, states, having a high score in the functional movement screen also translates into neuromuscular proprioception. If he performs better in these areas, he will be able to translate messages from the brain to his foot quicker and make a quicker decision on the field. So here's the taxes scores compared to his peers. As you can see, he does well in lots of categories. The category he does not do well in is knowing about changing situations. As a midfielder, it's very important that he can understand these changing situations and react appropriately. So we're going to really work on improving this. The standing broad jump, he's not a very explosive athlete, and as I mentioned, with improvement in the functional movement screen and improvement in neuromuscular connections, he'll be able to move his body throughout space more comfortably and hopefully become more powerful. The low board passing test, also a very important test for a midfielder. Passing is vital to moving the ball through each phase of the game. So we want to improve this phase, especially the ratio hit to miss, so he's a more accurate player. Arousal before and during the match. It's natural to be more aroused before the match. He's a little nervous. This is okay, but if we can make this a little bit more even, stimuli will come in slower during the match, and he can make easier decisions. Here's the functional movement screen compared to his peers. As you can see, he struggles in a lot of categories. Increasing this will not only keep him on the field and keep him healthy, but will create those neuromuscular pathways that will send messages from his brain to his feet in a more efficient manner. And he will also understand how his body moves in space compared to the ball and compared to his teammates in a more efficient manner. Task and ego orientation. If we can make him more task-oriented, he will take more self-responsibility for the improvement as an athlete. And it will be more about improving his skill set than it will be beating others. This is what we want to see in really elite athletes. So going to the position-specific improvement, passing, pushing and punching, and marking are the 3 subtasks of the transitioning phase. USA Youth Soccer Development states that transitioning is by far the most important phase of the game, and especially if you're a midfielder and this is your primary objective. So to improve in these 3 subtasks, we're going to look at these performance-determining factors. The technical and tactical PDFs, ball skills and tactical knowledge, physiology, neuromuscular coordination and leg strength, and then psychology, concentration and arousal. If we can improve each one of those individual PDFs, it will translate into improvement in the subtask and ultimately improvement in the absolutely vital transitioning phase. Now into the goals. So as I mentioned, the athlete voiced to us that he does want to play at a high level. So the number one goal of the entire macro cycle, all 6 months, that's a performance goal, is to be selected to the JVC Elite Professional Club. So to accomplish this, we're going to break down the 6-month training into 2 separate 3-month sections. The first 3-month section is going to focus on passing accuracy. The second 3-month section is going to focus on ball skills. We hope that after those 3 months of improving those 2 separate skills, the transitioning phase will become easier and thus becoming a better midfielder and eventually being selected to the professional club. The micro goals, weekly goals, we broke down week 1 through 12. First half in Meso 1, the second half in Meso 2. To cite 2 former Soviet coaches who helped develop periodization, Vladimir Ursin is one of them. Vladimir Ursin states that if you focus on one neuromotor ability at a time, you are more proficient in developing that neuromotor ability. So that being said, we decided to focus on one individual skill in each week and plan on that accumulating over the meso cycle for overall improvement. So as you can see, week 1 we do movement stability and we progress from there. So now looking into the macro goal, you can see how the intensities vary per month. We want to also look at the quotation at the top of the slide, elite players do not maintain elite performance year-round. From another Soviet coach, Zadzursky. Zadzursky believed that if you did not vary intensity, the athlete would not continually improve because the athlete would not be able to adapt to the increasing stimuli. For this reason, we're going to build and then drop off and then hope to continue the adaptation in the next cycle. William Kramer from the University of University of Connecticut, he has a quotation here that says, variables must be varied over time and the exercise prescription altered to maintain or advance specific training goals and to avoid overtraining. So once again, we want to vary intensities and training loads as the cycle goes on so that the athlete does not overtrain and that he encounters new stimuli and can adapt to those. So along the lines of varying training, we have week 1, adjustment, week 2, load, week 3, peak, and week 4, reload. We also want to note that we're going to test in the reload phase so the athlete has time to recover from the highest level of stresses in week 3, and we can get the most reliable and valid test possible. The meso cycle, we have month 1, month 2, and month 3. Zadzursky also said that you wanted to start each mesocycle and microcycle with non-specific movement and eventually progress to more sport-specific movement. So that being said, we start each microcycle and the entire mesocycle with non-specific movement, focusing on functional movement and overall neuromuscular connection. We move that the next week into ball skills, the third week into tactical ability. Excuse me. In week 4, we drop intensity, we recover, and prep for the next month of training. Vershansky, another Soviet coach who helped develop periodization, states that with intensity, you have to discover what the athlete can handle and what the athlete cannot handle. So if we get to a situation where the athlete is not adapting to the stresses that we are putting on the athlete, we must then reassess our training and reassess what intensities the athlete can handle. Vershansky is quoted here saying, the full realization of the sportsman adaptation is absolutely vital. So if the athlete is not fully recovered, the athlete is overtrained, he will not improve. Thus, the importance of varying training loads. Here into the microcycle. This microcycle is going to be concerned with week 1, month 1, week 1, with the training, the micro goal of improving stability. Once again, Dzerzowski and Earson both are concerned with the fact that you must start each microcycle and mesocycle with non-specific movement and build to sport-specific movement. So this is an example of what we do in this week. Training session 1 through 4, we focus on non-specific movement, stability training, making the athlete a more mobile athlete, a more stable athlete, and creating neuromuscular connections so that he can make quicker movements on the field. Into session 5, we move into ball skills, more specific. Session 6, we move into decision making, even more specific. On the 7th day, there will be a match play. So we want the athlete to be ready to perform well in the match. In session 7, we're going to come out and do psychology, arousal control, assess what we accomplished in the previous week, and prepare for the next week. Should also be noted, Gray Cook, the founder of the Functional Movement Screen, notes that movement learning and relearning have hierarchies that are fundamental to the perception and the behavior of the athlete. So if we don't continually improve the non-specific movement, the sport-specific movement will be hurt in the long run. So the training session goal, once again, the U.S. Youth Development for soccer states the transitioning phase is by far the most important phase. And since we are training a midfielder, it is even more vital that we focus on this transitioning phase. So we're going to look here at session 6, the decision-making session right before the match play. So we're going to start with a warm-up, 10 minutes of stretching, 10 minutes of box runs. Then we're going to move into 2 separate build-up plays, both for 15 minutes. Build-up play 1 will have less stimuli. Build-up play 2 will have more stimuli, increasing the stress on the athlete, both neurologically and physically. Then we'll move into a short-sided game for about 20 minutes so the athletes can play the game, and also in a situation there is more stress, so that once he gets into the game, it's a much easier decision-making process. And then we'll cool down, do some static stretching, some light jogging to help facilitate recovery into the next training session. So here's a graphic and a brief description of the build-up play 1. As you can see, there's not an overwhelming amount of stimuli, but the athlete is still in an intense situation where he has to make decisions. Build-up play 2, you can see much more stimuli, much more stressful situation for the athlete. Hopefully, we provide so much stress in training that when we get to the game, decision-making is easy. So here, we want the athlete overwhelmed in the attacking phase so that he can make the appropriate decision when necessary. And then attacking in the small-sided game. Once again, more stimuli, more stress, more difficulty making decisions. This is a decision-making training session focused on the transitioning phase. So if the athlete can handle himself in a short-sided game, come to match play, it'll be much easier to make crucial decisions. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.